The first time my stepdad said he was installing a family tracking app, I knew it had nothing to do with safety, it was about control. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table in our little house outside of Denver, eating a bowl of stale cereal before school. My mom sat beside him, nodding along like she'd been hypnotized, while he explained in this fake calm voice how there had been a string of break-ins nearby and it was only smart to keep tabs on each other. But the whole time he talked, his eyes were locked on mine. Cold. Predatory. Like a hunter explaining to his prey how kind it was of him to build the cage. My stepdad's name was Martin, and he'd only been in our lives for 6 months. 6 months since my dad died of a heart attack and left us drowning in medical debt. 6 months since Mom stopped being herself and started clinging to Martin like he was some savior. At first, I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. But I'd been keeping mental notes. The way Martin's hands lingered too long on my shoulders during hugs. The way he always seemed to appear in whatever room I was in, pretending it was coincidence. The way he smiled when Mom defended him, even when his behavior made my skin crawl. When I tried to tell her, she'd snap, screaming that I was ungrateful and lucky he took us in. So when Martin slid my phone back across the table that morning, already loaded with the tracking app, I knew it was over. He even demonstrated how he could see my exact location in real time, tapping the screen with this satisfaction in his eyes. And then he dropped the bomb. He admitted he'd been checking my after-school activity logs for weeks. He wanted to know why I sometimes stayed late in the library. Who I was talking to. What I was hiding. Mom didn't even flinch. She perched beside him like his sidekick, nodding with this glazed-over smile. "It's just good parenting, honey," she said. "Martin cares about you more than you realize." When I tried to protest, his whole demeanor changed. His voice went quiet. Deadly quiet. "You live under my roof. That means I own your phone. Your car. Your freedom. And Mom. God." She backed him up instantly, shrieking that I was spoiled, that I should be grateful anyone even cared where I went. That night, I lay in bed staring at the glowing screen of my phone, knowing every step I took was being recorded. My skin itched just imagining him watching dots on a map while I moved through my day. The next morning, I woke to find Martin standing in my doorway. Fully dressed. Just watching me sleep. He smiled when I startled awake. "You seemed upset last night," he said softly. "I just wanted to check on you." But the way his eyes roamed over me made my stomach flip. "Get out," I snapped, pulling the blanket higher. Instead of leaving, he stepped closer and sat down on the edge of my bed. His hand brushed my hair. "You're beautiful when you're vulnerable." I recoiled like he'd burned me. "Don't touch me." He chuckled, like my disgust was amusing. "You're being hysterical, Lena." At school later, I finally cracked. I told my English teacher, Mrs. Bennett, everything. Or at least as much as I could without bursting into tears. But how do you convince someone your stepdad is a predator when he hasn't left bruises yet? When all his crimes are slippery and hard to prove? She listened. She even scribbled notes. But then she gave me the answer I was terrified of hearing. Without concrete evidence, there's not much anyone can do. Maybe try family therapy. Family therapy. With the man who stared at me while I slept. With the mom who thought he walked on water. When I came home that afternoon, he was waiting in the hallway like a spider in its web. "You stayed 20 minutes after the bell today," he said casually. "Why?" My heart stuttered. 20 minutes. He knew. "I used the bathroom," I stammered. He leaned in, eyes narrowed. "You weren't talking to any teachers? Any counselors?" Before I could answer, Mom appeared behind him. And instead of saving me, she started screaming at me for embarrassing the family. That was the exact moment something inside me broke. I realized I was completely alone. And Martin knew it. His face lit up when Mom scolded me, his lips twitching with that smug satisfaction. He suggested I might need constant supervision. Mom agreed instantly. I watched her side with the predator who was destroying me. And Martin just smiled. That night, he came into my room again. Sat on my bed. This time his hand landed on my thigh. I shoved it away, voice shaking, "You're violating my boundaries." He smirked. Physical closeness is healthy in real families. He stayed for what felt like hours, lecturing me about gratitude and obedience. The next morning, I caught him rifling through my dresser drawers. He claimed he was putting away laundry. But my diary, the one where I'd been documenting his behavior, was gone. When I accused him, his mask slipped. He exploded, veins bulging, calling me paranoid and disrespectful. Mom came running and screamed at me. Not him. Me. "If you can't learn gratitude," she spat, "maybe you shouldn't live here when you turn 18. Martin wrapped his arm around her shoulders, like he owned her. And then he suggested boarding schools. Not boarding schools for education. No. The kind where kids vanish. And my mom agreed. I didn't know it yet, but that was just the beginning. Because the worst was still coming. The morning after Mom threatened to ship me off to a boarding school, I tried to wake up early and slip out before Martin noticed. I thought maybe I could at least grab some peace before school. But when I walked into the kitchen, he was already there. Leaning against the counter. Waiting. His eyes locked onto the phone in my hand. He extended his palm, cold and sharp. "Let me see it." I clutched it to my chest. "Why?" "Because," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I want to check your internet history." The kitchen felt smaller with every step he took toward me. His shoulders squared, his jaw flexing, his eyes unblinking. I backed up until my spine hit the refrigerator. My hands were shaking, but I still held onto the phone like it was my last lifeline. That's when Mom shuffled in, still in her bathrobe. She didn't even hesitate. She shrieked at me to hand it over, accusing me of hiding things. Martin smirked as she did his dirty work for him. I gave up my phone. He scrolled with his thumb moving like a blade, checking my messages, my searches, everything. Mom stood beside him, nodding like she was watching a proud parent. That was the day I realized he didn't just want to monitor me. He wanted to erase me. At school during lunch, I borrowed my friend Tori's phone. My best friend, her name was Kayla, had sent me dozens of messages. Her words got more frantic with each one. "Are you okay? Why aren't you responding? Did I do something wrong?" My blood ran cold. Martin hadn't just been reading my texts. He was blocking my replies. He was controlling who I could and couldn't talk to. The isolation wasn't an accident. It was strategy. That afternoon, I couldn't focus in study hall. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the scratching of pencils. So I tore a few blank pages out of my chemistry book. With Tori's pen, I started documenting everything. Dates. Times. Every word he said. Every look. Every invasion. My handwriting shook, but I kept going until my hand cramped. When I finished, I folded the pages into a tight square and hid them behind my gym clothes in my locker. Finally, something he couldn't delete. Something he couldn't monitor. When I got home, I froze. My bedroom door was cracked open. I always shut it tight. Always. Inside, my dresser drawers were too neat. Too perfect. My belongings didn't look touched, they looked staged. I tore through my room, checking every hiding place. That's when I realized my leather diary, the one I'd been using for weeks, was gone. Martin had taken it. I stormed into the living room. He was sitting there with the newspaper, calm as ever. I demanded my diary back. He didn't even blink. "What diary?" he asked, watching my face too closely, studying every twitch. Then he leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and asked, "Who have you been talking to, Lena?" Teachers? Friends? Who knows about our family? Every word was precise. A probe. A scalpel cutting into me to see what I'd reveal. The next few days, his campaign went nuclear. He started calling Kayla's parents, then other parents too. His voice would drip with fake concern. Lena's been going through some changes lately. I'd keep an eye on your daughter around her, just to be safe. One by one, my friends pulled away. Kayla found me after PE, her face red and hurt. My mom doesn't want me around you anymore. She said your stepdad called. What's going on? I couldn't even explain. Because if I did, Martin would find out. He wasn't just isolating me anymore. He was poisoning everyone else against me. That night, he came into my room again. But this time, I was ready. I had hidden my phone under the pillow with the voice memo app recording. He sat down like always, making the mattress dip. His hand clamped onto my shoulder, his voice low, threatening, "You're making me very disappointed, Lena. You're being ungrateful. That's not how good daughters behave." The recording captured everything. His tone, his words, the menace beneath the caring stepfather act. For the first time, I felt like I had a weapon. But the victory didn't last. The next morning, Martin stormed into my room and confiscated my phone entirely. He said I'd violated family technology rules. The recording, the only real evidence I'd managed to get, was trapped inside a device I no longer had. And the look on his face as he pocketed it? That smug smile told me he knew exactly what he'd taken from me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the blank ceiling, wondering how long until he found a way to erase me completely. Because if I didn't fight back, he'd win. But I wasn't ready for how far he was about to go. When I was 9, before Dad died, I used to have this recurring nightmare. I'd be standing in our hallway in the middle of the night, every door in the house locked. I'd bang and scream, but no one answered. Then I'd hear Dad's voice, muffled, like he was behind a wall, calling my name. I'd run toward it, only for the floor to vanish beneath me. I'd fall and fall, clutching at air until I woke up drenched in sweat. Back then, I'd pad down the hall and crawl into bed between my parents. Dad would rub my back until I stopped shaking. "Dreams can't hurt you, Lena," he'd whisper. "You're safe." Now, 6 years later, I realized the nightmare hadn't been a dream. It had been a warning. Because here I was, locked inside a house with someone who wanted me trapped, and Dad wasn't here to keep me safe anymore. A week after Martin stole my diary and my phone, the walls around me tightened even more. I overheard him in his office one night. His voice was low, businesslike. He was on the phone, writing notes on a yellow legal pad. Yes, therapeutic boarding schools. Yes, for defiant teens. What's the intake process? And the visitation policy? My stomach lurched. He wasn't bluffing. He was researching places to send me and places where I'd be completely cut off. When I pressed my ear to the door, I caught fragments: communication restrictions, minimum stay 12 months, parental consent required. I backed away, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear. By the next morning, I couldn't concentrate on anything. My grades were slipping. Every failed quiz was another weapon he'd use against me. Mrs. Bennett noticed. She kept me after class, her kind eyes narrowing as she studied my face. "Lena, what's happening at home?" For a second, I almost told her. I almost screamed it all out. But Martin's threats hissed in my head. "No one will believe you. You'll only make it worse." So I mumbled something about stress. She let me go, but I could feel her watching me as I walked away. The next day, something shifted. The house phone rang, almost no one ever called it anymore. I grabbed it before Martin could. "Lena? Sweetheart?" "It's Aunt Claire. My mom's older sister. She lived 2 towns over and hadn't visited in months." Her voice was warm, but laced with suspicion. "How are you doing? Do you need anything?" My throat closed. My eyes darted toward the kitchen, where Martin was rummaging through drawers. I had seconds. "Something's wrong," I whispered. "I need." That's as far as I got before his hand clamped down on my shoulder, squeezing hard. He ripped the phone away, his voice suddenly honey-sweet. "Claire! So nice to hear from you. Lena's just been going through a phase." He steered the conversation like a pro, painting me as unstable, dramatic, rebellious. He wouldn't even let Claire speak to me again. But she wasn't stupid. I heard it in her voice when she said she'd be stopping by tomorrow. Martin froze for half a second. Then smiled. "Of course. We'd love to see you." That night, the house turned into a rehearsal stage. Martin coached Mom on exactly what to say, making her parrot lines about how loving and stable our family was. She repeated them back like a script, her eyes glazed over. Then he turned to me. His face inches from mine. "If you so much as hint to Claire that something's wrong, I'll make sure you're on a bus to that school by the end of the week. No visits. No phone. No second chances." His breath was hot against my face. "Do you understand me?" I nodded, too terrified to speak. When Aunt Claire arrived the next day, the whole house felt staged. Martin played the concerned father perfectly, guiding her on a tour of our spotless living room. Mom kept up the bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. I sat frozen on the couch. My chance to escape was right in front of me, and I couldn't take it. But Claire's eyes were sharp. She noticed the way I flinched when Martin touched my shoulder. She noticed the brittle way Mom laughed at his jokes. She noticed the tension humming beneath every word. She asked careful questions. But Martin deflected like a politician, twisting every answer into proof of his responsible parenting. When she finally left, I caught her watching me through the car window, her expression tight with frustration. She knew something was wrong. But Martin had woven his story too well. As her car disappeared down the street, Martin's smirk spread across his face. He'd won again. That night, he came into my room for the third time. He didn't even bother pretending anymore. He sat on my bed, his hand pressing down on my thigh with deliberate weight. "You see what happens when you try to make me look bad," he whispered. "Nobody believes you. Not even your own family." I stared at him, my body rigid with terror. And that was when it hit me. I wasn't trapped in a nightmare anymore. I was awake. And the fall hadn't even started yet. Because the worst part wasn't that he was winning. The worst part was that I was starting to believe him. A few nights after Aunt Claire's visit, I woke to the sound of drawers being yanked open. At first, I thought I was dreaming, until I saw him. Martin. Kneeling by my dresser, rifling through my underwear drawer like he owned it. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked, sharp in the silence. He didn't flinch. Didn't look guilty. He just straightened, holding one of my shirts between his fingers. "Laundry," he said flatly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But his eyes were studying me, gauging every twitch of my reaction. I lunged forward, snatching the shirt out of his hand. "Stay out of my room." That's when the mask dropped. His face twisted, rage snapping through him so fast it felt like the air itself split. "You ungrateful brat," he snarled. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." I froze as his voice boomed down the hall. Mom came running in, her robe half-tied, her hair a mess. For one insane second, I thought she might finally see it, finally protect me. Instead, she screamed at me. "Why are you being hostile to Martin? He's been nothing but good to us." My mouth went dry. "He was in my dresser?" "You're paranoid," she snapped. "Maybe if you learned gratitude, you wouldn't drive everyone away." And then she said the words that felt like knives carving into my chest. "If you can't behave, Lena, maybe you shouldn't even live here once you turn 18. Martin slid an arm around her shoulders, his lips curling into a sick grin. Or, hey, maybe we should start researching schools. The kind that can straighten her out now. She nodded instantly. That's a good idea. I stood there shaking, staring at the two of them like I didn't recognize my own mother anymore. The next morning, I couldn't even look at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face was pale, my eyes ringed with purple shadows. And then, something worse, I spotted a faint red mark on my shoulder where Martin had grabbed me the night before. My skin crawled. At school, I ducked into the library and tore more pages from the back of my textbooks, documenting everything. The bruises. The drawer search. Mom's words. I hid the pages in my locker again, behind my gym shoes. It was the only place I still had left that was mine. But that afternoon, as I opened my locker, I felt the floor drop out of my stomach. The hidden papers were gone. Someone had been in my locker. And there was only one person who had the spare key to all the school lockers. Martin. That night, he cornered me in the kitchen. Funny thing, he said casually, sipping a beer. I found some notes today. A little fiction writing, I suppose. About me. My blood froze. He leaned in close, his breath sour with alcohol. You really think anyone's going to believe that? A hysterical teenager scribbling lies in her school books. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He chuckled. That's what I thought. Then, with deliberate calm, he added, I've been looking at programs. Boarding schools, treatment centers. Places where kids like you learn discipline. One phone call, Lena, and you're gone. He tapped the side of my face with 2 fingers before walking away, leaving me trembling against the counter. 2 days later, I overheard him on another call. This time, I pressed myself against the wall outside his office, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would give me away. Yes, I want to move forward, he was saying. She's defiant. Needs constant supervision. What's your earliest intake date? My vision blurred. My body felt like ice. He wasn't threatening anymore. He was planning my disappearance. That evening, Mom's phone rang. It was Aunt Claire again. I knew it before Mom even said her name. I could hear the sudden tightness in Martin's tone. He snatched the phone before Mom could finish saying hello. Claire! What a surprise. Lena's fine, just acting out. I wanted to scream, but fear glued my mouth shut. Then Martin's face twitched. He looked at Mom, annoyed. She wants to visit again. Mom hesitated. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. But Martin leaned down, whispering something sharp in her ear, and she nodded obediently. That night, I sat on my bed in the dark, hugging my knees, shaking. For weeks, I'd been trying to survive. To outlast him. To write everything down in scraps and whispers. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Martin wasn't going to stop until I was gone. If I didn't find a way to fight back soon, I'd vanish into one of those schools, erased, forgotten, silenced. And the terrifying part? No one would even ask where I'd gone. The night before Aunt Claire's next visit, Martin was more agitated than I'd ever seen him. He paced the living room like a caged animal, his voice sharp as he rehearsed Mom's lines again. She's troubled, she needs discipline, we've been nothing but supportive. Mom parroted every word back, her face pale. She wouldn't even look at me. Then Martin turned his focus to me. He leaned so close I could feel the heat of his breath. If you try anything tomorrow, Lena, even a hint, you'll be gone within 48 hours. You'll never see your precious aunt again. Do you understand? I nodded, but inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was done. The next afternoon, Claire arrived. She walked in with her sharp eyes scanning every detail, her smile polite but strained. Martin turned on the performance immediately, the doting father, the concerned parent. Mom backed him up, chiming in with brittle laughter and robotic affirmations. And me? I sat still on the couch, my heart racing, my palms damp. Until I remembered the flash drive. I'd copied Martin's browser history weeks ago, the research into boarding schools, the how to control teenagers guides, the guardianship legal documents. I'd hidden it in my backpack, waiting for the moment I'd need it. That moment was now. When Martin left the room to take a fake work call, I slipped the drive into Claire's hand. My fingers trembled so hard I thought I'd drop it. Her eyes widened, but she didn't say a word. She just tucked it into her purse, her jaw tightening. Minutes later, she opened it on her laptop. Her face went pale. Screenshots of his searches. Notes he'd typed about isolating me. Pages of my shaky handwriting documenting everything, the late-night visits, the stolen diary, the confiscated phone, the bruises. Claire's expression hardened into something fierce. She stood, slammed the laptop shut, and marched into the kitchen where Mom and Martin stood. "This is abuse," she said flatly, her voice shaking with fury. "And I'm not leaving until something changes." Mom froze. Martin's face drained of color before twisting into rage. "That's not evidence. That's teenage dramatics. She's lying to get attention." Claire spread the papers across the kitchen table, my notes, the screenshots, every scrap I'd hidden. "This isn't dramatics. This is a pattern. You've been grooming her, controlling her, isolating her. I'm calling Child Protective Services, and if you try to stop me, I'll call the police too." For the first time, Martin's mask cracked. His voice rose into a roar, his hand slamming the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. "You don't get to come into my house, Anne." Claire cut him off. "This isn't your house. And Lena isn't your daughter." The room went dead silent. Mom looked between them, her face white, her lips trembling. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That's when I stood up. My legs shook, but my voice came out steady for the first time in months. "You're not sending me anywhere, Martin. Not boarding school, not some prison camp. I'm done being your victim." He whipped around, eyes blazing, but Claire stepped in front of me like a shield. "Touch her," she warned, "and you'll be in handcuffs before dinner." Martin's jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. For the first time, I saw it, not the smug control, not the manipulation, but panic. Pure, naked panic. Because he knew it was over. That night, Claire packed my bag herself. She walked me out of that house while Martin stood frozen in the hallway, his face contorted with silent rage. Mom didn't move. She didn't stop us. She just watched as her daughter left with her sister, tears streaming down her face, torn between the man she clung to and the child she'd failed to protect. The car ride to Claire's house felt unreal. My hand still shook as I stared out the window, processing what had just happened. For the first time in months, I wasn't scared of Martin lurking outside my door. I was free. Over the next few weeks, Claire helped me file everything: guardianship papers, restraining orders, police reports. The flash drive became evidence. Teachers like Mrs. Bennett backed me up, pointing to the sudden decline in my grades, the bruises, the weight loss. Martin tried to fight back. He sent letters, alternating between threats and apologies. But they all went straight into a file. Every word documented, every mask stripped away. Mom called sometimes, her voice breaking, begging me to come home. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because home wasn't safe. Home was the cage he built around me. The night before my 17th birthday, Claire made me a cake. Just the two of us. As I blew out the candles, I realized what my wish had been all along, not to be free from Martin, but to be free to exist as myself again. I had that now. But the scars didn't vanish. I still woke some nights convinced I'd see him in the doorway, watching me sleep. I still caught myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting his shadow. Recovery wasn't instant. It wasn't clean. But it was mine. Looking back, I think the scariest part wasn't Martin's threats. It wasn't even Mom choosing him over me. It was how close I came to believing him. To thinking maybe I really was the problem. That's the trick predators use. They don't just trap you in their house. They trap you in your own mind. But I fought my way out. And he'll never own me again.